First of all, welcome to the 20th Annual Santa Cruz County High School Poetry Competition. Give yourselves a big hand, please. And this is, I think most of you signed the release when you walked in. This is being filmed. If you don't want to be on camera, please let Lynn Anderson know. He's wandering around someplace and he'll take care of that. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and get started. I do want to thank all the parents as well, and a number of teachers. A number of teachers have been involved in this whole process. And I'm sort of going to read a lot of names real shortly, because this would not happen without the entire community involved. And it's really gratifying to see us come together on such an important event. From my background, as Lynn mentioned, I'm the Santa Cruz County Superintendent of Schools, but I have an extensive background in alternative education and special education. So I really have an affinity, or I really understand the importance of different pathways and different ways of teaching students. And poetry is one way. And I got to thank Dennis and Lynn and Poetry Santa Cruz for the wonderful work that they do in a number of schools throughout Santa Cruz County. You're going to have a wonderful evening tonight. So with that, I want to begin by thanking the teachers. We have Ms. Natari, Ms. Melissa Silver, and Ms. Daniel Zaragoza from Aptos High School. Are you here? Well, thank you for doing what you do. Give them a big hand, please. Ms. Kathleen Crow and Ms. Nasai at Cypress Charter High School. Are you here? Welcome. Dr. Cavallero Rob at Georgiana Bruce Kirby Preparatory School. Mrs. Margot Kicks from Harper High School. Ms. Sherry Gregory and Ms. Martis at Monterey Bay Academy. Mrs. Beth Basilius, Mrs. Elizabeth Danielski, Mr. Laramie Holtzclaw, Mrs. Rigby, and Mr. Marcus Schwager at Monta Vista Christian School. Ms. Melissa Sanders Self at Mount Madonna School. Yeah! All right. Ms. Heidi Story at Pacific Coast Charter School. Ms. Christine DiCaporel at Pacific Collegiate. Mr. James Lucas at Pajaro Valley High School. Ms. Tiffany Darrow at San Lorenzo Valley High School. Mrs. Ann Brooke Freeman at Scotts Valley High School. Ms. Candow at SoCal High School. And Mr. Dennis Warden, who teaches poetry writing workshops with Ms. Elizabeth Shaw at Star Community School, Ms. Bonnie Dankert at Hartman School, and Ms. Holly Nelson at Natural Bridges School, and Ms. Jessica Vargas at the Yes School, along with Stephanie Spungen at the Recovery Center. Give them all a big hand, please. And lastly, I think again, Poetry Center, Lynn Anderson right there, it would really not happen without Lynn. We have the poet laureate here with us, David Swinger, here tonight, so should be an enjoyable evening. Let's give Lynn and David a big hand, please. But I also want to thank the members, donors, supporters, and volunteers of Poetry Santa Cruz, including the Cultural Council of Santa Cruz County, Poets and Writers Incorporated, the William James Association, Bookshops, Santa Cruz, Capitol Book Cafe, Cabrillo College, KUSB, Casablanca Inn, Grey Wolf Press, University of Pittsburgh Press, Roberts Ward Coffee House Press, Copper Canyon Press, and Farrar, Strauss, and Giroux. Give them all a big hand, please. With that, I'm going to give it back to Dennis Warden, who will lead the program. Dennis.
Each year, all of the high school students in the county are invited to submit poems to this contest. This year we had 380 poems submitted, and all of the poems were read by our judges, and the judges had no idea who the heck wrote the poems. Part of the strength of the contest is that the poems are by anonymous until the judges have picked selected the winners and all the folks who will appear in the anthology. We're going to start with the honorable mentions. And not all of the poets were able to make it tonight, but I believe that Helen Berry is here, And she has received an honorable mention for her poem, Black Crocodile. She's a student at SoCal High.
Black Crocodile. Elbows on windowsill, splinters in the skin, eyes by the moon, hopelessness within. Face to stars, staggered breath, night blankets, afraid of death. I spot him, golden coals, shadowed cloak, peering into empty souls. Dissolved in dark, steady gaze, paralyzed heart, nebulous haze. Iris green, his grin is stiff, white and seen, jagged cliffs. Afraid of death, yet a smile. Afraid of death, Black Crocodile.
But I'll tell you what, Julia Grattan knows what a sulky is, and she's going to read her poem right now. She's a student at Mount Madonna School, and her teacher is Mrs. Sanders Self.
It's basically what you guys said. A woman that's a seal and can change in between, but can't change without the seal skin. So this is called the Sulky. She climbs up the old, weather-beaten bluff, but stands proudly by the stormy bay. On this cloudy day, the bay looks like stew. It starts to rain lightly, and thunder rolls. But like a wooden top, she twirls and spins, her arms pulled outward by the spinning basket. The rain falls harder. She takes the basket with her on the path along the bluff. The branch of the tree she is climbing spins in the wind. She plucks 10 leaves from the bay. Below, the sea tosses and rolls. For the cold winter months, they'll have stew. When she arrives back home, she starts the stew. She begins to unload the heavy basket. There are leeks and clams for stew, butter for rolls, the leaves from the bluff. She makes the stew in a cast iron pot and drops in the bay. As it simmers, the broth violently spins. She waits for the baby to wake and spins soft wool to make scarves. Her motions still. On her walk along the free wild bay, she saw a seal. Weighed down by her basket, she had returned. Now she says, for to bluff her husband, she will take old Wilson rolls. She fills the basket, a jar of stew and some rolls. To her husband she spins a story of rheumatism. She succeeds in her bluff, walks to the old wooden barn, and sets down the stew. She climbs the rickety stairs to the basket, where she knows the skin is, and breathes in the smell of the bay. She runs right through the storm, down to the bay. Her mind is made up. She rolls up her clothes, puts a note in the basket, and dives. The water spins around her like the stew she left cooking at home, and the trees on the bluff. The bay welcomes her. She spins with it. The rolls and stew are left behind her in the basket on the bluff. This is called The Apple Tree, and it's a prose poem. The old, sprawling bellflower tree with its lichen-covered long limbs stretching out in no particular direction, and small leaves, has lovely, delicate blossoms covering its branches in the spring, small, hard green apples in the summer, ripe apples with rosy sun-touched spots in fall that I eat, the juice running down my arms, and little creeks that feed into larger rivers in the glorious fall. And me with a cat in my lap, sitting on its largest limb in the blustery winter. It is windy and chill, with the smell in the air of the first rain on the old dry concrete. The branch I am sitting on is damp and roughly textured, yet the cat on my lap is a warm, purring heater, soft, though damp, like anything else in this dark, cloud-strewn world. And the few remaining leaves above me are rustling in the wind, and the twigs that desperately need to be pruned are rubbing against one another, a sound like the creaking of old wooden steps in the middle of the night, when most people are fast asleep. If my brain moves far away into daydreams, and I stop petting the cat, he looks up to me with a look of reproach and a half meow, so I obediently resume petting him. A purr of contentment rumbles out of his throat, and he squeezes his eyes shut. No need to see anything right now. No fears mandating weariness. His feeling of peace and safety permeates through me and the world, and the sprinkling rain covers everything with its soft touch. In the winter, I sit in the apple tree with a cat in my lap.
Yeah. We come to Avi Cohen, who has received an honorable mention for her poem, I do not know how to pronounce the name of it.
It's Ava.
Ava. Oh, Ava. Well, I definitely don't know how to pronounce the name of your poem either. Will you come up and pronounce it for us?
All right, I don't know what the poem is in German, but I know that it means in English, Garden Path with Hens, and it's a painting by Gustav Klimt. No one notices the brown chickens nestled amongst tiny flower capsules that burst forth, attempting to conceal a narrow path. 2 hens scratch along, imprinting the ground with beak kisses, tapping a code into the earth, but then stop. Necks stiffen and feathers bristle. Run, chickens, run, back to the coop. Up the path and away you fly. You can fly, remember? Paint is melting and running, and go before it smears your brown tail. No one remembered to put the chickens back in the coop, tucked behind the butcher's block. No tail, silently screams small brown chicken. Only a bloody nub left where brown plumage used to be, because she didn't realize she had wings. Page 62. The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, that lucky bastard. Richard Harper, the lucky bastard, never had to take the garbage out. His mama let it pile higher and higher until it fell out onto the sidewalk, spilling apple cores and sticky milk cartons everywhere that we chucked at passing cars. I felt bad for Richard because his mama was always off with some guy and never home. But I also kind of liked the way he lived. He was the perfect Huck Finn, Richard was. If he's Huck, I'm only Tom Sawyer. If Tom was a girl, that is. The other day, Daddy told me not to talk bad about Richard's mama. I was helping him fix up the malt shop counter at the time. Daddy just bought the place from Mr. Walters and needed my help to put it back together. She's a good lady, and she don't need anyone giving her a hard time, Daddy said. I asked why, but he just kept silent and pounded in his nails. My cat Felix went missing again. Maybe it's because we sold all 11 of her kittens and left her none. Me and Richard looked everywhere for that stupid cat. But all we found was my daddy's friend, Bobby White, sitting outside the Mayflower Lounge smoking a joint. We asked Bobby if he'd seen Felix, and he'd said he'd keep looking. But I don't think anyone will ever find that stupid cat again. Mama wants me to be a junior debutante, but I think this idea is dumb. If I go be a junior debutante, I won't have time to see Richard anymore. And he might think that I like being a debutante even more than I like him. But this isn't true. Because Richard Harper is my best friend. He really is. Even though his life is better than mine. Don't tell Daddy I said that. Because no one tells him what to do. Like I said, he's Huck Finn. He don't even have a daddy, and his stupid cat didn't run away.
We will now go to Anastasia Welch.
Melted. When the oil lamp tipped over, the trailer burned to the ground. My collection of old rotary phones melted. Your laughter turned to a pile of ashes where the bed used to be. Now like laundry in the washer, loneliness circled the void.
We come to Amber Zeiss, who receives an honorable mention for her poem with the title Prose Poem, and she is from Mount Madonna School, and Mrs. Sanders Self is her teacher.
Everything I see hurts me, reminds me of what I am not. I tried. I shrunk my body into a foggy haze of lies and carved the pain I denied into my skin and watched it bleed the tears I could not cry. So a diagnosis is no cure. Words lose their meaning in reiteration. Years pass, but the hurt never does. So I run, with my head back screaming my inward battles into the air of the sea, hoping that somehow its beauty will soak into me, so that somewhere between the breaking waves is what I have been searching for. But every time my feet hit the cool water, I am once again shocked with disappointment. This world is cruel, but I am much worse. Where can I run from that? Thank you.
We have two third prize winners. One of them is Jackie Edens for her poem Sea Glass. And her poem A Day Like This is also in the anthology. She's a student at Georgiana Kirby Bruce Preparatory School, and Dr. Caballero Rob is her teacher.
Resting hidden in the sand, a small shard of frosty glass lies on the beach, one side still a faded yellow. It is half concealed by smaller flecks of rocks and shells. Edges smoothed by the waves, no longer a hazard to anyone. The sun had shone through to brighten the shop. Many people came through the door to be fitted in garments with his expertise. The closed sign leaned against this particular piece here. When the sun lowered itself, a yellow star was painted on the window. The doorbell seldom rang then, and soon a group of men came. These were not customers who stood before the window, weapons in hands, seeing the star and hating it. They did not stop to glance at their faces in the reflection before they smashed the glass into a tiny 1,000 shards. They stormed into the shop and came out dragging the tailor behind them. They raged on as more and more glass spilled into the street. In the morning, a boy and girl wandered out. Someone's voice pulled at them from within, a feeble voice. But it was too late. They were seen. With a gun at their ears, they swept the streets alongside the other women and children who remained. A few shards were left, washing into the Elbe River with the next rain. They followed it along, passing the marching soldiers for years and years, until the ocean took over and carried this piece of glass on a long journey. Submarines charged by, torpedoes crashed. This shard froze into an icy bank, but escaped when the sun willed it. It traveled south to warmer waters and landed on a sunny beach. The young hand skipped it back to continue its journey. The sea became cold as ice floated past. The waves thrashed until the shard broke in two. Finally, the sea leveled again. At long last, the waters warmed, and the shard found itself wedged beneath the sand again. She will pick it up and turn it over in frail hands. She will wonder where it came from, probably a piece of broken bottle thrown by a careless seaman, but the yellow will remind her of a man yelling at her to sweep. Okay, my other poem is called A Day Like This on page 45. The perfect fifth pulls my eyes shut. It is a sunny day. The light cuts through the branches and illuminates the water droplets resting on the leaves. With my head on the cool grass, there is much to accomplish. Lying here on a bed of morning dew, thinking of notes that become phrases that link into melodies that combine to give life to a chord rolling along the field, waltzing towards me with the clouds. It lands itself inside of me. I can feel it spinning around, expanding my chest, making its own balloon of warmth. I hold a little red flower between my fingers and let it go as a gentle breeze lifts it higher and higher and spins it around and around. I hear the drums of a dance in the distance. Together they move, two boys, two girls, and their voices. One saxophone, one piano. Many nights of practice, many nights of recording to create the perfect feeling of my back tingling and the chills crawling down my spine. I close my eyes and listen. If you really concentrate, you can feel it seep into your bones and run its gentle finger up and down your back. So grateful for a day like this.
And now our third prize winner is Jason Ritchie for his poem, La Dame. His poem, The Door to the Room, is also in the anthology, and he'll read both of them.
La Dame. She hung in my hallway, above my father's broken model Viking ship, and dusty books written in French. She'd always been there, ever since I was born. Lines, just lines. Charcoal lines. My parents can't remember when or where they got her. It used to scare me, the slight grin and eerie simplicity of the continuous lines. Her hair is curly, like my clouds in preschool art. Matisse drew many pieces, insignificant pieces. People add her to the list. I won't. Everything's important somehow. Her eyes are mere parentheses sketched onto paper. Her nose an L, dropping down, curving from the eyebrow. The eyebrows themselves mirroring the eyes, undemanding. When I got sick and couldn't get out of bed, I'd see her through the open door. I'd count the M's on her face, of which I found many. I copied her when I was 9. The upper lip, her right eye, 2 in her fluffy collar, the contour of her right ear, and with some imagination, 1 in her hair. The perfect jawline, 3 waves of mouth, and near hollow yet mysterious eyes of La Dame. And my other piece is on page 21. The door that refused to stay open. The door with rectangles that shaped into a face when I lay sideways on the warm blue carpet. The door that separated my room, no, the room I shared with my brother, from our parents. The door beside which hung a wax heart ornament, gray with dust, which I had always wanted to melt with my fire breath. The door that wasn't even there till I was 3. The door shadows crept under so you could hide from parents or monsters before it was too late. The door with the fake brass mushroom handle that seemed lower as I got older. The door that was propped open for years by a plush toy car. The door that was white and, just like the rest of our house, got more off-white as time passed. The door I slammed, mostly because I could. The door that didn't make a satisfying slamming noise, so you would have to repeat the action several times. The door with no lock. The door framed by some crappy stucco that had always had a tack or 2 pressed into its weirdly spiky surface. The door that was no longer mine when I got my own room and I had to leave behind. I loved having a room all to myself, but I never felt at home like I did in the room guarded by my door. The door I wanted to take with me when we moved, even though it hadn't been my door for more than a year. My maman didn't understand. The door of my childhood. The door I'll never see again.
Now, our second prize winner, Erin Gudger, for her poem, One Look. And she's a student at Harbor High School, and Mrs. Kipps is her teacher. We come now to our first prize winner, who is Ellie Lustala. The Santa Cruz County Poet Laureate David Swanger will read her poem.
This is a love poem, and like the best love poems, it doesn't really praise. It also expresses the foibles, or another side of the loved person. And it's on page 7, and it's the first poem in the anthology. The grandfather, glass of wine and a thick mustache, gold pinky ring and a lot of cash, an old Lincoln Continental and values fundamental, always stern, yet sentimental. Gentle hands, though big and strong, there to guide me when things go wrong. A plate of pasta, never without a meatball. Cholesterol may perhaps be his downfall. Cigar embers burn and the poker game starts. No one will know he's cheating. That man is so smart. Women slaving away in the kitchen and preparing the meal. Call it old-fashioned, but their cooking's unreal. He loves his family through thick and thin, would risk the world to protect his kin, a man of strength, love, and pride. My grandfather's heart stands Semper Fi.
Jasper is a student of Mrs. Kipps at Harbor High School, and his poem is The Internet. It's on page 27.
It's a digital cloud of information, full of anonymous rage, hate, and scorn. It's used in every single nation, and its never-ending collection of porn. It's a super mega hyperspeed dictionary with more words than you can imagine. It's It's a beanbag chair accessible library, much to your local librarian's chagrin. It's a 3D virtual battle zone and an infinite billboard for bureaucrats. It can even be used as a telephone, and it's the world's largest source of pictures of cats. It's a museum of artwork of all shapes and sizes. It's crowded with programs both helpful and sinister. It's a place where you can win tons of free prizes, especially since you're always the site's 1000th visitor. It's the decline of the usage of the term face-to-face, a phrase which is rarely used right anymore, because you don't even need to be in the same place to talk to your friend who lives all the way next door. It's a land where you can be whoever you desire, like a platypus tamer from Kazakhstan, or an average middle-named mailman named McGuire, and you can do it all from your perch on the john. It's the emperor of time sinks, with no remorse, cluttered with social networks on which to lurk, but I never do any of those things, of course. I spend all the time doing work.
All right, the next poet is Erin Beek, who is a student of Mr. Holtzclaw at Monte Vista Christian School, and her poem is entitled Trapped in Tragedy.
She was abandoned at birth, torn between two lives, too young to feel the pain, too young to know the reason why, caught in a beautiful, beautiful disaster, given and taken as a blessing and a curse. The story is hidden. She is just a normal girl, fragile at heart and in skin, facing her own hate alone, keeping it locked away, far away. It slowly kills, like exposed cancer cells. She grows into bone and flesh. Curiosity looms over her like an angry cloud. Her heart is exhausted. Tears are permanently stained to her white cheeks. Secrets of love and lust hide in her angel eyes. Unwanted and ashamed, covered by the face of greed, holding on to the threads of God's love, loosening the grip with every crimson drop. Bruised and scarred, memories and dreams, words of pollution to the mind, carved onto her skin as a reminder, drawn to temptations that pierce deeper than the sharp edges of a blade, a pain far more intense than that of any injury, like a fatal disease, never-ending fear and frustration, wishing, hoping, and longing for it to go away, for it to stop haunting her life, infecting the happiness that fights to break the shield. Sleepless nights and countless hours, she is frozen in blurred, racing minutes, images that are so realistic, captivating Satan's kiss in the mysteries of darkness. She is made of lust and intimate frustration, every step pulling her deeper into intoxication. Sin looks so good, tempting her with its sugar-coated attractions, swirling thoughts of empty meaning, cold and unholy desires clouding her mind, stealing away the bittersweet fantasies. A single tear is home to 1,000 dreams, attempting to drown her demons that know how to swim. Her heart beats tattered and frayed, alongside the sunrise. Daily routines start over again. The fake smiles and bright eyes are glued on like a porcelain doll, desiring an escape, a break from the whirlpools of insomnia's hands. The spoken words become overpowered by a single note, journeying through her brain's fragile passageways. Falling like the last leaf from the tallest tree, paralyzed by the fear of bearing the weight of his sacrifice, she is placed just outside the boundaries of his precious grace. Mercy's broken wings continue to hold the light and the many shattered pieces of her heart.
Our next poet is Caitlin Black, who is a student of Mrs. Silver at Aptos High, and her poem is entitled The Problem with Fairy Tales.
There once was a beautiful princess who sorrowfully had to bring. She sat in her tower, awaiting the hour her hero would ride in again. There once was a handsome young prince who was brawny and bold and brave, yet he couldn't manage a harmless old cabbage, much less a dragon in his cave. Yet these two were destined to be in love for eternity, for she was so lovely and he was so brave. How were they not meant to be? Along came the fairy Moraine, who thankfully did have a brain. She took pity on he who was climbing a tree, but kept falling out once and again. She gave him instructions complete, so detailed that none could compete. Yet while she observed, she was subtly perturbed to find he forgot it too sweet. He didn't say let down your hair, but instead throw your hands in the air. She did as he said, and to Moraine's dread, they stood for 6 hours right there. I give up, cried the fairy, distraught, so upset that her work turned to naught. So she packed up her things, turned around, flexed her wings, and left the two there just to rot.
Our next poet is Christopher Cobb, who was a student of Mrs. Sanders' self at Mount Madonna School. Well, Christopher's poem is called Adrift Then Afloat, on page 37.
I'm on a boat, I'm eating pie, I have children, they are little, they hate apples, but they love noodles. There is a hole in my boat, the boat is sinking, just like my children. They dropped my pie, they were so little, I'll eat the apples, the only problem is I hate noodles. I miss my boat, I miss my children, I miss my pie, I only have apples, they are so little, I threw away the noodles. I'm floating on what is left of my boat, and my children, and the container for my pie. I ate all the apples. They filled me up so little, I miss the noodles. I see an island, I will float there with my boat. I will bury my children, I will lick clean my plate for pie. My tummy is full so little. You know what sounds good right now? Noodles. My shelter is made of a boat. I buried my children. I threw away my plate for pie. I planted the cores of my apples. I am skin and bone so little. I wonder if Castaway knew how to make noodles. I forgot my children so little. I forgot the taste of apples and pie. I'm still searching for noodles and a new boat.
Our next poet is Nicholas Dope, who is a student of Mrs. Danielski at Mount Vista Christian School. He has 2 poems in the anthology, Layers Upon Layers, on page 39, and Turn the Lights of the Universe Off, on page 4.
I'll be reading Layers Upon Layers first, page 39. It was originally titled Things I'd Like to Say to Him. I look and find you in the hollow spaces between my ribs, rolling across my bones, settling beneath the skin. How does one exercise shadows on the wall, memories within memories, layers upon layers, scars over scars? Begone from my flesh, I cast you out, and as you pass across the threshold of my lips, you whisper and I scream. The hollow spaces sit empty, and somehow you remain, layers upon layers, shadows on the wall. And now, for my second poem, Turn the Lights of the Universe Off. Where will I be this time next century? A tree, perhaps. Let the children play among my roots, and laugh and smile and climb, up and up and up, until the sunlight surrounds them. And in 1,000 years, a crashing wave against the shores of my childhood home where we spent the summer of our youth, laughing and smiling and learning what our bodies were meant for. And in 10,000 years I'll be the earth, and the husbands and wives upon my back will weep for the sons and daughters they lost to the war. I'm dying, and this time you can't heal me. And when all that is lost and when all that is known has come to pass into the realm of shadows, and the universe has turned her lights off, I'll be dust and ash, forming new stars that you may someday look upon. Promise me you'll smile. It's been ages since we last encountered one another.
But now we go to Lauren Edwards, who is a student of Miss Darrow at San Lorenzo Valley High School, and her poem is entitled Wonderful Torture. It's on page 47. It is. Sorry, Lauren.
What wonderful torture it is here to sit next to you while the music plays, so sensuously close, yet so painfully far away. A brush of the fingers, a burning red face, and a desire to look deep into your whispering autumn eyes, with breaths shallow only to me, my proximity burning with passion. I relish this deep sickness in my stomach and my soul, for even the tiniest drop of sweetness that centers in this darkness could fuel my heart for a lifetime.
Our next poet would have been Olorin Edmond Lamer.
Olorin did, and this is a sonnet for his grandmother. Before I read it, I just wanted to say thank you very much to everybody at Poetry Santa Cruz on behalf of all the teachers in Santa Cruz County. And this is a great way to get our students to write for a reason, and thank you. So here's Lauren's poem. George rises to debilitating pain. He struggles to communicate but can't. He fights to remember his grandchild's name. He slowly rolls out of bed at a slant. I catch him and lift him into his chair. I point at a picture of me he knows. My mother is tired. He needs constant care. He goes limp. I wrestle him into clothes. He taught me to skip rocks and spot blazes, taught me that I don't always need to speak. He taught me to work my way through mazes. Up in the mountains, we hiked for a week. Just a few days before Christmas, he dies. Holding my hand tight as I sob, he dies.
We shall proceed to Haley Lodi Woolard, a student of Mrs. DeCaporal at Pacific Collegiate School. And her poem is entitled SCPD, and it's on page 52.
On the worn oaken desk sits a cup. Coffee. Cold. Abandoned this morning. The layer of milk fat is gathering on the top. Congealing, like the blood in their veins. And everyone that passes by knows what must be done. But the events of the day are so fresh, so painful, it would hurt to move the cup. So it remains untouched by human hands. And if only the same could be said for the owner. At the end of the day, only the cup has remained unmoved.
So we'll go then to Celine Miranda, who is a student of Mrs. Kemp's at Harbor High School. And her poem is Applying for a Boy.
I couldn't get into him. I tried. I sent everything in on time. Maybe my papers were too short. Maybe they were too long. Perhaps feminism and enlightenment were not good topics at all. Could it be my hobbies were too ordinary for his idealistic somebody? What I needed was a spark to really catch his eye. My friends, with their extracurricular activities, gave him a grin. They all got in. They knew where to stretch and how to play the game, so I wasn't really surprised when I heard his letter came. No, I didn't get into him. Believe me, I tried. At least now I know the secret on how to apply.
Our next poet is Joshua Morales, who's a student of Mr. Lucas at Pajaro Valley High School. His poem is Nature, Industry, and Man. It's on page 55.
Nature, Industry, and Man. Her skin was the most striking shade of forest green. The lush warmth emitted from her body could warm the coldest heart of any man. Her long, elegant hair, rich mahogany, flowed gently in the breeze and fell around her shoulders. Her eyes, however, are what caught the attention of any and all. They were soft, gentle eyes with a fair shade of ocean blue. Always calm, but under the peacefulness and the beauty lies the raging fury of billions of years of storms and shifts in the very foundation of her being, but she never liked showing it. She continued walking, unaware of the growing thickness of the air and the smell of smoke hanging obscenely in the breeze. She was pulled violently into the darkness, thrown to the floor, and pinned by brutish arms. She looked up, blue eyes full of frantic fear at her attacker, and she nearly retched. His skin was a murky, smoky black, exuding vile fumes from the two smokestacks located on his shoulders, which were absolutely disgusting to everyone of the senses. His face was darker than the rest of him, cracked and jagged coal that glowed fiercely with fire. His eyes were the same color as molten iron, bubbling with excitement and repulsive vigor. He brought his face closer to hers. He smiled and more fumes escaped and suffocated her. His molten red eyes looked into her frightened blue ones, into her very soul as some iron dripped onto her skin and hissed as it burned into her. He pulls his face away and he punches her delicate face. Her stomach, her chest and throat, again and again and again. She is near passing out when he begins to have his disgusting way with her. She screamed and no one heard. She cried but no one saw. After what felt like centuries, he finishes. He stood, kicked her one last time and spat, and he walked away. She did not move from there. Her skin, no longer forest green, was replaced by a dead brown. Her mahogany hair burnt and cut. Her magnificent ocean blue eyes no longer existent, replaced by empty beds of mud and dry sand. She was broken, bloodied, and robbed of the very thing that made her be. And we just watched.
Cici Moreno is a student of Miss Sanders' self at Mount Madonna School. And her poem is entitled The Girl at the Edge of the World.
Isolation was all she knew. Isolation from her family, from herself, from knowledge of the outside world. Her mind was her world. She was on the brink of insanity, cautiously peeking over the edge into the dark, swirly-twirly madness that was her thoughts. She was on the edge of the world. Sometimes she could see the black and silver wispy winds of insanity and feel the coldness tickling her feet, inviting her in. Was it really there? Oftentimes she couldn't tell. The white, spongy walls and overwhelming quiet has taken a toll on her. She has experienced such loneliness and isolation that her thoughts are her only consolidation. She has gone so far into her mind that she can't escape. One slip, and down she goes, stumbling off the edge of her world, of her mind, and into the inviting world of insanity.
We go now to Anna Reeves, who's a student of Mr. Holtzclaw at Monte Vista Christian School. And her poem is Common Knowledge.
This is common knowledge. Didn't you know that a day is a gap between a sleep and a sleep? Waking hours are a dream, and at night we live with our eyes closed. Didn't you know work is a filling between a meal and a meal? We work from cereal to turkey sandwich and turkey sandwich to meatloaf. The harder the work, the faster time is gone. Didn't you know brains and hearts exist primarily to insulate heads and to occupy the extra space in chest cavities? Didn't you know bodies are born to fill clothing? You were born because your mother needed something to put in those minuscule cotton pants. You did your job sufficiently, then you grew. Actually, you should also know humanity is only around so that mosquitoes have plenty of blood. Love is a chemical reaction. Its sole purpose to inspire teenage romance fiction and Taylor Swift ballads. God is man's best invention. Life is a painfully long line we must all wait in till the doors of death open. Everything means nothing. Haven't you heard?
Richard's poem is called Bow and String. It's on page 65.
Sharp, cold to the touch, firm, grasp in my hand. Strained, taut like my muscles. Silence, breath of concentration. Ready, leaned against my chest. Set, tuned to perfection. Go. Draw the coarse hairs, slowly, steady, surely, fully, across the steely wires, and listen, listen.
Mariana Sanchez is a student of Mrs. Zaragoza at Aptos High. Her poem is I Am Not a Twig, from which we copped a few words to give a title to this anthology.
I am not a twig. I am a stone. I will skip for miles and miles before I sink to the bottom of the sea. I am strong like a rock. Squish us all together and we will become a boulder. Or throw me far and I will fly high. At one point, I will fall. Yet I will bounce back up again until you manage to break me. Just know, I do not break easily. I am not a twig, nor am I like shattering glass. I do not tear like paper, for I am, we are, stones.
Stephen Traeger is our next poet.
It's August 27, 2012. I'm standing, eyes wide open, staring at a man, his pistol in hand. His arm extended to his right, directed towards a head. The head plastered with a face, painted with a grimace. His shoulders hunched forward, wrapped in a plaid shirt. A purchase, no doubt, from an American GI in Saigon. The plaster-faced man is about to be shot. A victim, I think, of a cruel, heartless gun, the weapon of war, an act of vengeance. The shot rings out. This is all a photograph, an image displayed on a wall, a Pulitzer Prize winner, 1969, an artifact of war. General Loan, finger on the trigger, the murderer. What a violent man, I say. Who does he think he is, shooting a civilian in a Saigon street? A man defenseless against ringing revolver shots. Or so I thought. It's Monday, September 10th, 2012. I'm standing, eyes wide open. I return to the museum for eyewitness. I see ahead, the one who shot the photo. A quivering lip, Eddie Adams, finger on the button, the destroyer of another life. Who's to blame when violence occurs? The one who wields his weapon, or the one who is doing his job as I am doing mine? No one wants to hurt anyone, but it is war. The Viet Cong murderer, whose blood splatters moments later? The South Vietnamese murderer, soon to be general, whose life splatters moments later? Who's to blame when violence occurs? He who held the gun, those who hold the gun, he who created it, or me, if I walk away, eyes wide open.
Let us head toward the end here with Samantha Watts, who's a student of Mr. Schwager at Monte Vista Christian School, and her poem is Broken Umbrella.
The rain falls, pitter-patter. It wets the ground, relieves the plants, but his words are my umbrella. The rain falls, pitter-patter. It makes puddles, overflows ditches, but his embrace is my umbrella. The rain falls, pitter-patter. It creates lakes, drowns the flowers, but his promise is my umbrella. The rain falls, pitter-patter. It floods the streets, invades the houses, and my umbrella fails me. The rain falls, pitter-patter. The seas roar, its waves crash, and I choke on the rising tide. The rain falling was no more. He brings back his words, but I have no need for a broken umbrella.
Final poet of the evening is Ashna Weaver, who is a student of Mrs. Darrow at San Lorenzo Valley High School. Her poem is entitled Faith in Shadows.
Faith in Shadows. I believe more in a wavering whisper than an unshakable voice, if it is different from anything spoken before. I believe in the roots that no one notices, deep beneath dry soil, balancing the branches above. I'll believe without hesitation in the millions of moments that make up a day, flipping pennies heads up, the seed planted purposefully, every single dedication page, the speech writer's late night, and one ant's journey to the sea. See? Seeing isn't believing. The surface breaks beneath our feet.